There we go. Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ruby, this is Ruby Red, and today is episode 3 of round 2 of me playing Bailey's TBR game, Joke's on Me. I love playing this game. I did take a break from the board just for Wonderthon, basically. I did initially plan to try to work them together, but I just decided that was going to be a little much for me. So I took a break, now I'm back, and let's flip some cards. Let's see what books we get. Okay, let's do our next flips. These are the cards from our previous episodes, and I have not shuffled this deck yet. And the little dinosaur, excuse you, Carbon, is here where we left off on NetGalley. So this is where we started, right? We have a ways to go still. All right, our first card is a 10. Oh, that's great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2024 challenge. Okay. Our next card is a 6. So we're going to do 2 prompts for that, a 3 and a 3. 1, 2, 3, reread of choice. Oh my gosh. And 1, 2, 3, a 30 by 30. Oh my god. This is going to be a long one. I can feel it. Our final card for this is another 10. So we definitely are completing our round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A recent purchase. How perfect. Okay. Congrats on the end of round 2. Okay, so this is the final episode of round 2, episode 3. We finished the board. Now we have to actually read the books. So let's talk about the books. So for the first prompt, 2024 challenge, there are a couple of year-long challenges that I'm working on, and for this prompt I can choose any of them, and I'm choosing the Buzzword Readathon challenge, which I am doing with my friend Lizzie from Lizzie's Literary Life. We are reading a nonfiction book to fulfill each buzzword prompt this year, and the June prompt was repeating words, and for that I decided to read I Am by Maggie O'Farrell, 17 Brushes with Death. This is a memoir, and yes, I am more than halfway done with it already. I did read slightly more than half of this book for Wonderthon, and I'm gonna finish it for this, okay? Okay, our next prompt is a reread of choice, which I'm pretty excited about because I'm actually not very much of a rereader, but this year I have been rereading the Realm of the Elderlings books with some friends. And then I guess I will stop rereading and just read the next books in the series. Anyway, for this I'm gonna read Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Live Ship Traders, and this is a book that I gave to Bailey for her birthday, and then she started it and decided she wanted nothing to do with it, and so she re-gifted it to me. So thanks, Bailey, for this book. I am like a quarter of the way into this one already, and I am the last of my friends to be reading it before we move on to Mad Ship, so I do need to kind of book it through this, as they say, but that's my reread of choice. And then the next prompt, 30 by 30, I decided to use a library book for this one, a book that I don't actually own, which is going to be Disability Visibility. I forget the author, but it's a collection of essays by disabled people about their experience as disabled people in the world, both visible and invisible disabilities. I think there's quite a range in the collection, and I have a hold on that audiobook, so I'm excited to get to it because I think it's going to be very good and I'm going to learn a lot, which is what's so great about reading. The next prompt is recent purchase, which is sort of fun because I just bought 2 books in the last episode, and so I'm going to be reading one of them this episode, and that's The Clerk by Guillermo Sacamano. I didn't just pick this one because it's shorter. I picked this one out of the 2 most recent purchases. I just didn't want to read another like historical fiction because I read quite a lot of that for Wonderthon, so I wanted to try something a little bit weird, and I think this is going to be weird. So yeah, this is my recent purchase choice. And then for my choice this episode, I'm going to pick Confounding Oaths by Alexis Hall, which I have an ARC for, and I'm Sorry I keep looking behind me like that. I'll probably cut them all out, but I did watch a bear walk right out of here the other day, so just slightly concerned. Anyway, the final book for this is going to be Confounding Oaths. That's my choice pick. It's by Alexis Hall. I have an arc of that, so it is another book that I owned, and I'm trying to just always be reading an arc right now, so when I finish one, I pick up another one. And I'm actually buddy reading this with Martine from Just Martine, so thanks Martine for reading this with me. I did buddy read the first book in this series. It's a historical fantasy romance sort of situation, and I read the first book, Mortal Follies, with a couple of friends, and we all kind of decided that it wasn't that good, but the concept and the narrator was very funny. So anyway, I'm reading the second one, and so is Martine. So those are the books for this episode. Let's stop talking and start reading. And it's so windy, I need to be done with this. Okay, I'm about to get in bed and finish this book, but I wanted to give like a little intro to it since I've read 3/4 of it already. I just want to speak a little on how how my first impressions kind of were of this book, and then it has been a while since I've picked it up, so I'm gonna fly through the end and then maybe I'll have like updated thoughts at the end. It just seemed like a good idea to do like an update now and then an update at the end. So here it is. I Am is a book about near-death experiences, brushes with death. They are not chronological, and they vary in intensity. And when I first learned the concept of this book about Maggie O'Farrell, a novelist that I really love, I was shocked because like she doesn't have a career that you might think of correlating with like high amount of near-death experiences. Like she's not like a Mount Everest guide, okay? She writes fiction novels, so why has she come so close to death so many times? So I was expecting it to be a lot of like horrible medical incidents, honestly, because I just was like, what? Like, does she have some illness that is like multifaceted that has caused her to have all these brushes with death? But the short answer is, well, the long answer would be reading the book, but the short answer is that her interpretation of a brush with death is interestingly wide reaching. Like there has been, of course, like a near brush with a car accident. There was a mugging that, you know, could have ended in a different way, and that is like aligned with what I think of as like a brush with death. The opening story of this, she encounters a man while she's like out walking in the woods as she's like 18, and he really scares her, but she keeps her cool and kind of scares him back, and you know, she gets away from him, and then she does report it to the police, and so then like a few weeks later they come back to talk to her because someone else was killed and they think it was by this man. So that's like another instance where she was like brush with death. And then there's another chapter where she has been in a long-term relationship with this guy, and she finds out that he had been cheating on her for basically their whole relationship. And so she goes to a clinic to get tested for STIs because she's now had, you know, an unknown amount of exposures, sexual exposures that she like doesn't know about and doesn't know the status of any of those people. So she doesn't know if she could have been exposed to something potentially life-threatening like AIDS. And that particular story I think is set in the 90s, in the early 90s. So I just thought that including that situation as a brush with death is like an important thing to consider, and the ways that you put yourself at risk in your general day-to-day life and the ways that other people can put you at risk. Like, that's maybe not what I expected going into this book, but I don't think that's the wrong way to think about it. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I was really enjoying this. I find it very readable, but of course some of the brushes are really upsetting. She had a lot of issues with pregnancy, so that's a little content warning for you if you are sensitive to topics surrounding that. There's a lot of that in this book. So now I'm really hyped up to read about more Brushes with Death. All right, I finished I Am by Maggie O'Farrell, and I've got some mixed feelings. I feel like when I spoke about it earlier, I was overall like very positive about it. Partly I felt very positively about the concept, but I also I like her writing, so I feel like I was like, this is a good book and I like it a lot. But that, I don't know if that's true. A few of the chapters definitely had an emotional impact on me. The last Brush with Death had me crying, actually. Never mind. But I did feel, like strong emotions from reading this. And I do think technically it is a very good book. But I sort of feel like I wish I hadn't read that. Like, I didn't like it, but I know it's a good book. So I think the issue, I don't really like memoirs. I almost never like memoirs, and I just I know that about me, and so I rarely ever attempt to read them. But I thought because I love her work, this would be a fun one to read, and it was not fun, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm left with the feeling of I'm so glad that's over, and not in a good way at all. I don't feel good about it. So that's kind of a bummer, just because I wanted to like it, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm struggling to rate it, but I at least did finish my June Buzzwordathon book, so that's good. Okay, hi, I'm coming to you outside without my mic again. I'm sorry, I hope it's okay, but I finished Ship of Magic, and I just wanted to say that it's still a 5-star. It's still one of my favorite books. I had a fantastic time reading it. I'm so glad I reread it, and I got to talk to some of my friends about it, and there's just it's so rich. There's just so much in there. I think, I don't know, I sound so obnoxious saying this, there's just so much you can get from it by reading it over and over again. So I can totally see that this is a series that I think I will at least want to reread many times. I don't know if I actually will, because I really struggle to reread, and I don't know when I would have reread these if it wasn't for this decision to read them with my friends. But here we are. I love Robin Hobb. I don't know what else to say. I love this book. I think so many characters had an arc just within the book, and I know that there are going to be other arcs to observe in the coming books. I don't know. I can't wait to pick up Mad Ship, but I have quite a few other things to get to before I dive into that one. So let's keep this moving. Okay, here I am in my car in the parking lot, and it is pouring rain, but I just was having some thoughts about disability visibility that I wanted to share now, so that when I finish the book, by the time I finish the book, they'll be gone. You know what I mean? So I'm about halfway through, and the book is a collection of work by disabled people of all kinds. It's diverse in every way that it can be, which is awesome. And the writing, some of it is more of a story, some of it's more of an essay. The prose varies in type, I guess. And I'm not having the best time. Let me explain. I don't think I like a book where there are many components written by different people. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I read something with, many different authors with their own separate chunks together in one book. And I don't think I like it. I'm not ever really drawn towards short story collections by a variety of authors or by just one author. I haven't really read a collection of essays in a long time, but the ones that I have read have been all essays by one author. So my problems with enjoying this book are not necessarily with the book content content-wise, it is terrific. Form, it's more the form, which is on me for picking a book with a form that I don't think I like. I'm gonna finish it because some of the writing is very good, but some of it's not as good. And the back and forth of that, like not knowing what you're gonna get with every new section, and some of the sections are quite short. Most of them are pretty short, but some of them are very short. So you just don't know what you're in for, how long you're gonna be in it for. It's just like not been a great experience for me. But so far overall, I have, again, like content wise, like it is excellent. It's shining light on many different facets and types of disability and types of disabled experiences. You know, the breadth of this of this book is very vast, which I think is very important when you're trying to tell this kind of story, to sort of share the disabled experience, because it's obviously not one experience. Everyone has their own experience. So I'm appreciating reading that and learning that and hearing from different perspectives. But yeah, I'm not loving the actual book. And you know, something else like about me being reluctant to be like, I don't really like this, is like there have been multiple chapters where the author explains, and like, you know, even the chapter is mostly about how hard it is to write as a disabled person, depending on what kind of disabilities you have. It can make various aspects of the writing process extremely difficult. And so the fact that those people have still managed to like include this, you know, piece in this book, like great job. But here I am being like, it's just not, the quality's not consistent, the voice isn't consistent. So yeah, this is a case of like, so yeah, I feel a little bit silly in my criticism here, and I don't actually mean to criticize the book, because the issues are with me, because the book was like, hey, I gathered together voices from all corners of the disabled community and brought them together into this one book so that you can hear from them and learn from them. And then I, as a reader, am like, I wish there weren't so many voices in this. I am not super excited to pick it up again, just because I know that I don't know what I'm gonna get. It's like starting a new book every single chapter. I don't like that. So that's where we're at, about halfway through, but we'll see how I feel at the end. All right, I finished Disability Visibility yesterday, and I've just been sort of thinking about, well, if I have anything to say about it that I didn't say already. And the answer is kind of no. I still think it was like wonderfully vast. I think there's a lot of important stories in there. I thought that the diversity of voices represented was excellent. And, you know, for a not super long book, it definitely had a lot to say and to share. And I think that is awesome. But overall, I don't know, I stand by what I said before about style and length. So that's one book off my 30 by 30. I am glad I read it. Thank you. All right, I'm here because I've had a singular thought in my head about The Clerk. No, not really a singular thought. I've had a couple of thoughts. I'm about halfway done. And the first thing is that I feel like earlier when I introduced this book, maybe I said something about it sounds like it's going to be a little bit like Severance by Lang Ma. That is not true. Wrong comparison. But what it is reminding me of is like a combination between Crime and Punishment and Hurricane Season, which I loved Crime and Punishment and I hated Hurricane Season. And I feel medium about this book. So that all checks out. It's about this guy, a clerk at an office doing an unknown job, unknown industry. He's nameless, and he has a bad attitude, basically. And his, like, the Crime and Punishment part is his, like, internal monologue and, like, narrative, and, like, he wants to commit like violent acts all the time, and then he's like, if I was a good person I wouldn't want to do that. No, maybe I take it back. Like, he's just like kind of rambly and, you know, not nice or good. So it's so is that Dostoevsky? Yeah, that's who it's reminding me of. But then there's just one really funny thing that I have to update about. I cannot explain the plot of this because I do not know what the plot is, but there's this bit at the beginning where he has this coworker who sits at the desk behind him, and the coworker's always like writing in a little notebook. Like every time he turns around to look at the coworker, that guy's like quickly like closing his notebook and then like putting it in his desk. And he eventually like asks about it. He's like, "What are you writing down?" And the coworker's like, "Oh, I keep a diary of my thoughts." And in his head, he's like, I didn't think men could do that, basically. And he's very suspicious of that coworker, and he thinks he's being spied on. He thinks it's like he has this whole paranoid thing, Crime and Punishment. And then later on, he has an interaction with someone, and he gets back to his desk, and he like pulls out a notebook, and he writes down like everything that he said, everything the other person said, and he's like writing down like what all of it could possibly mean, because he's just like really thrown off by the situation and like confused. And then he's like, wait, am I the kind of person who could write a diary? And then he sort of starts to like have positive feelings about his neighbor behind him, but like that guy already thinks that he hates him because he's always glaring at him because he did hate him. But now that he thinks of himself as like a person who could write in a diary, he's like, maybe we should be friends. It's just like, what? It's kind of funny, but very weird, a little bit like gruesome, I guess, in the way that like not as gruesome to me as hurricane season actually was, but just in the like everything becomes a little bit disgusting when you talk about it in a certain way, and when you direct the reader's gaze to like various aspects of like an imperfect society. I don't know. So interesting, not obsessed, but definitely, I mean, it's interesting. It's something. I'm gonna keep reading. Okay, car update. I'm in the car. That's the update. No, I finished The Clerk. I didn't like it. I finished this recent purchase of mine, and I did like it more conceptually. Like what is happening here? Okay. I liked the comparison that I was getting, the similarities I was finding between that book and Crime and Punishment, and like thinking about Russian literature and how I actually do really want to read more of it. But the like I didn't like the story. I didn't like any of the characters, and I don't think you're supposed to. But yeah, I didn't really have a good time reading it. I liked there were a few little bits that I was like, oh, that's kind of fun, but not nearly enough to, I think, redeem the book as a whole for me. Like, I think it is a good book, but I did not like it, you know? Like, I'm sure it's technically good. I know it is. However, I didn't enjoy it at all. Not at all, but yeah, I didn't enjoy it. So I'm glad it was really short, because otherwise I definitely would have DNF'd it, and that would have been sad for me to have bought a book and then like immediately DNF'd it. But yeah, I finished it. The Russian stuff ended up, I think I said in my last, how much it was reminding me of Crime and Punishment, but then like the characters actually started talking about Russian literature, and that sort of like, it became even more so like, oh, it's like about that, like that's why we're here, kind of. And anyway, yeah, it's over. What was it about? I could barely tell you. A clerk, he starts having an affair. He hates his family. The city, you know, is like, it's a corrupt, painful city. He doesn't know who he is or what he wants, and he has all these like violent imaginings of like what he can do to like break free of his job and his wife and his like his boss who he hates. Like it's just about like him wanting to escape his own life, but through always like kind of violent, treacherous means, and how he feels about like that part of himself. That's the like very Russian, very Crime and Punishment thing about it. So at some points while I was reading this, I was like, wow, if anybody is like too intimidated by the size of Crime and Punishment to read it, they can just read this, and it's a lot the same. But it's not as good, okay? Because it wasn't very good, and Crime and Punishment is excellent. So that's how I feel about that. Hi. I finished Confounding Oaths. I'm sorry the lighting is like this right now. It is what it is. It's very hot. I don't have my mic. The birds are out. We're going to try to get through this kind of quickly because I have a lot of thoughts about this book and not an easy way to present them in mind. So, Confounding Oaths, I finished it. It's a historical fantasy romance novel, although the romance basically didn't matter in this case, which is fine. Like, a historical fantasy novel is still something I would like to read. However, I was expecting a romance, and there was a romance between two characters that just, like, was so nothing. Like, the reasons for them connecting and wanting to remain connected were so meh. Like, and also not connected to the overall story, so it just felt like an afterthought. The main story is happening to the main character's sisters, and so we're just like, I don't know. The narrative was a bit of a mess to me. What I really liked about the first book in the series, Mortal Follies, was the narrator. It's very funny. It's very, meta. The narrator is Robin Goodfellow, or Puck. So, like, a fairy who's chronicling the adventures or misadventures, I suppose, of mortal folk for his lord's entertainment. And so he's always telling you about how he followed the narrative by shape-shifting into this or that, and how his people are not really like this, and you should always be so careful of what you say around a fairy. And it was very funny and engaging and fun in the first book, and that's why I wanted to read the second book, even though I didn't love the actual story in the first one, and then I didn't like the story in the second one either. And by, like, halfway through the book, like, the narration style was grating on me. Like, he was making too many references, it was just, like, too funny and, like, self-referential. Not the actual narrator was being self-referential within the text. It became too much for me. So I wasn't really enjoying that. And then the story just got a little bit too confusing and convoluted. I don't know. There was nothing really holding me in. Like, the main character was not really anyone that you would necessarily care about or root for. And I feel like all the interesting, juicy bits of the story were related to the sisters of the main character. But while they played an active role in the overarching plot, like, they were not central somehow. It still was like the story was meant to be centrally focused on the romance between that main character, Mr. Caesar, and Captain James. And, like, Captain James' involvement in this whole mess was necessary because his whole group of friends are, silly, goofy, wacky guys, and they get involved, and that, like, makes everything happen. And that was fun, but, like, the only way that those characters could get involved with this other set of characters was through, like, a relationship between Captain James and Mr. Caesar. So, like, it had to happen, but there was nothing about the relationship that was, like, interesting or fun to me. Like, the romance in this was not part of it. It was a historical fantasy novel. I don't know. Yeah, disappointing. Not really a good time. I buddy read it with Martine. Thanks for reading it with me, Martine. Martine really enjoyed it a lot more than I did, and we both sort of said, like, I think the books that we were reading alongside it maybe made for different experiences, which, yeah, I was reading this while I was reading Ship of Magic, which is, like, one of my all-time favorite books. So it had a lot to live up to, but I don't know, I've loved so many of Alexis Hall's other books, so I don't know why this series is just not it for me, but it is what it is. And now, I guess, let's wrap it up. No? And that brings us to the end of this, bless you, of this episode of Jokes on Me. Round 2 complete. Quick recap. For a 2024 challenge, I read a Buzzwordathon book, I am. Then for a Please, just give me a second, Carbon. For a reread of choice, I read Ship of Magic. For a 30 by 30 pick, I read Disability, Visibility. Unbelievable. For a recent purchase, I read The Clerk, and for my choice, I read Confounding Oaths. So that's 5 books, and I only really liked one of them, which is not great, but overall I feel like this whole round has been pretty good. I've read some books that I liked. I read a lot of books. I got a lot of arcs read. I've been doing great. I'm keeping up with my NetGalley. I've gotten a bunch of books off of my bookshelf that I had been meaning to read, and I finally got to read. So I think we've had some successes here, and I'm excited to play again sometime, but not for a little bit because I do have some other projects I want to work on. But you have not seen my last jokes episode, I don't think. And I believe I've heard some rumors that some other people might be posting jokes episodes soon too. So we'll just have to wait and see, you and me both. And I will see you back here sometime soon for another video. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.